They were laughing before she even reached the stage. The kind of laughter that burns, the kind that follows you home and whispers in your ears long after the noise has faded. She could feel it crawling up her back as she walked past rows of neatly ironed uniforms and polished shoes, her own faded dress brushing against her thin legs like a reminder of everything she didn't have. It was supposed to be a joke. A harmless prank. Let the poor girl sing, they had said, grinning. Let's see what she can do. But no one was prepared for what would happen next. Before we continue, take a moment right now. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, in the hidden light inside every underestimated soul, like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this deserve to be heard. Her name was Amina, and most people at Crescent Public School barely knew it. To them, she was simply the scholarship girl. The one who wore the same pair of worn-out shoes every day. The one whose lunchbox often contained nothing more than dry bread folded in newspaper. The one who walked to school instead of arriving in cars with tinted windows. In a place where wealth shimmered like a badge of honor, poverty was a stain that could not be ignored. Amina lived on the edge of the city in a one-room brick house with a rusted tin roof that trembled every time a truck passed by. Her father had once worked at a textile factory, but an accident had crushed his leg and his livelihood in the same afternoon. Her mother stitched clothes for neighbors late into the night, her fingers cracked and raw, her eyes permanently shadowed by exhaustion. Music was the only thing that softened the harshness of their world. On evenings when electricity failed, Amina would sit near the small kerosene lamp and hum softly while her mother sewed. Her voice, fragile yet steady, would fill the room like warm light, and for a few precious minutes, the walls seemed less narrow, the air less heavy. But at school, she never sang. She kept her head down, her notebooks neat, her answers precise. She had learned early that standing out for the wrong reasons invited cruelty. And yet cruelty found her anyway. It found her in whispers about her clothes. In giggles when she couldn't contribute to expensive class projects. In sideways glances during parent-teacher meetings when her mother arrived in a simple cotton scarf among silk and perfume. The annual school talent show was the highlight of the year. Posters covered the hallways. Students buzzed with excitement. Singers, dancers, comedians, everyone competed for applause and trophies. Participation required a fee, one Amina could never afford. So she never planned to join. But that afternoon, during music class, fate shifted. The music teacher, exhausted from rehearsals and overwhelmed by overconfident performers, asked casually if anyone else wanted to audition. A group of girls from the back row turned toward Amina with mischievous smiles. One of them, the daughter of a wealthy businessman, raised her hand and said sweetly that Amina loved to sing at home and should definitely perform. The room erupted in stifled laughter. The teacher, unaware of the cruelty beneath the suggestion, looked at Amina expectantly. The entire class turned toward her, eyes gleaming with anticipation, not for talent but for embarrassment. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought everyone could hear it. Her palms grew cold. For a moment, she considered refusing. She imagined the relief of sinking back into invisibility. But something else rose within her, something quiet yet fierce. A memory of her mother's tired smile when she sang. A memory of her father closing his eyes, whispering that her voice made him forget his pain. She nodded. The auditorium felt enormous when she stepped onto the stage during auditions. The microphone stood tall before her, metallic and unforgiving. A few students snickered from the back rows. Someone coughed dramatically. The teacher adjusted the piano, waiting. Amina closed her eyes. And then she sang. The first note was soft, barely above a whisper, but it carried a clarity that cut through the murmurs. The second note rose stronger, steady and pure. By the third, the room had fallen silent. Her voice was not loud in the usual sense, it did not shout for attention. Instead, it wrapped itself around the air, smooth and aching, like a story told from the deepest part of the soul. She sang of longing and hope, of nights without light and mornings that still arrived anyway. She sang as if every hardship she had ever endured had been distilled into sound. The laughter disappeared. The snickers died mid-breath. Even the teacher's hands froze above the piano keys as she realized she was witnessing something rare. When Amina finished, the silence lingered for a heartbeat too long, as if the room itself needed time to recover. Then, slowly, applause began. Not polite clapping, not reluctant approval, Genuine, thunderous applause. The girls who had suggested her name stared at her as though seeing her for the first time. The teacher approached her with tears shimmering in her eyes and wrote her name at the top of the performers' list. Word spread through the school like wildfire. By the time the talent show arrived, anticipation buzzed differently. People weren't whispering about the poor girl anymore. They were talking about the girl with the unbelievable voice. But admiration did not erase struggle. At home, Amina still practiced between power outages. She still worried about her father's medication. She still stitched tiny beads onto borrowed fabric for a simple performance dress her mother altered from an old garment. Doubt crept in during quiet moments. What if the audition had been luck? What if the real show exposed her as ordinary? The night of the talent show arrived with bright lights and decorated banners. Parents filled the seats, their jewelry glinting under chandeliers. Amina waited backstage, her borrowed dress fitting imperfectly but clean and carefully pressed. She could hear the audience applauding the performer before her. Her heartbeat matched the rhythm of her breathing, fast, uneven. When her name was announced, the applause was polite, curious. She stepped into the spotlight. For a split second, fear tightened around her throat. The crowd looked massive, faces blurred together. She imagined the laughter returning, imagined her voice cracking, imagined confirming every cruel assumption. Then she remembered the tin roof trembling in the wind. She remembered her mother sewing under dim light. She remembered her father's broken leg and unbroken spirit. She opened her mouth. And this time, she didn't just sing. She soared. Her voice rose higher than it ever had in the small room she called home. It carried strength she didn't know she possessed. It trembled only where emotion demanded it, not where fear tried to intrude. The auditorium transformed into something sacred, each note weaving through the audience like invisible threads stitching broken places together. Parents leaned forward in their seats. Teachers held their breath. Students who once mocked her now sat frozen, eyes wide, hands clasped. The final note lingered in the air, shimmering. And then the entire hall stood up. A standing ovation. Not because she was pitied. Not because she was poor, but because she was extraordinary. Tears streamed down her mother's face in the back row, her hands trembling. As she clapped, her father, seated beside her on borrowed crutches, wiped his eyes openly, pride glowing brighter than any stage light. That night, Amina didn't just win first prize. She won something far greater. She shattered the narrow story others had written about her. She transformed from the background girl into the voice no one could ignore. In the weeks that followed, something subtle but powerful shifted. Students greeted her in the hallway. Teachers encouraged her to apply for citywide competitions. The same girls who had mocked her now avoided her gaze, not out of superiority but out of quiet shame. But Amina did something unexpected. She forgave them. She understood, in a way most never would, that people often laugh at what they don't understand. That insecurity sometimes disguises itself as cruelty. She did not become arrogant. She did not seek revenge. Instead, she continued to sing, at school events, at community gatherings, even at a local charity fundraiser where a visiting music coach heard her perform and offered to train her free of charge. Opportunities unfolded slowly but surely. Scholarships for advanced music programs appeared. A small recording of her performance circulated online, gathering thousands of views. Letters arrived from strangers who said her voice had moved them to tears. Yet every evening, she still returned to the small brick house with the rusted roof. She still sat beside her mother. She still hummed under flickering light. Success had not erased her roots, it had deepened them. Years later, when she stood on a grander stage in a city concert hall, introduced as a rising star with a voice that defied circumstance, she closed her eyes and remembered the laughter in that school auditorium. She remembered how it felt to walk toward humiliation and instead discover destiny. And she silently thanked the moment that had been meant to break her. Because sometimes, the joke becomes the miracle. Now, if this story has touched your heart even a little, if you've ever felt underestimated, overlooked, or mocked, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe for more stories that remind us of the power hidden inside ordinary people. Your support helps these stories reach the souls who need them most. And before we end, I have a special request. Comment the word believe if you think no one should ever be judged by their circumstances. Amina's story is not just about a beautiful voice. It is about resilience. It is about dignity in the face of ridicule. It is about the quiet power of refusing to shrink yourself to fit someone else's expectations. They had asked a poor girl to sing as a joke. But her voice did more than stun everyone there. It changed the way they saw her. It changed the way she saw herself. And sometimes, that is the most powerful song of all.